In this week's Parsha, we read about the Shemitah and the Yovel cycle. The Torah tells us every 7 years is Shemitah. A person who had land in the land of Israel was obligated to rest his field on the Shemitah year. And then after 7 cycles of 7 years, on the 50th year, then we have the Yovel year, where again a person was required to rest their field, to not work their field. This concept of having a 7-year cycle 7 times leading up to 50, hopefully is something that is very familiar to us today, because we find ourselves in the middle of the counting of the Omer, which is also a commandment to count 7 days, 7 times. We count 7 weeks, 7 times 7, 49, and then on the 50th day, we have Shavuos. So the Shemitah and the Yovel is a 7 cycles of 7 years leading up to Yovel, and the Omer is counting 7 weeks of 7 days till we get to Shavuos. What's the connection between these 2 cycles? What's the connection between these 2 countings? If you think about what the Shemitah year was for a farmer, it's an incredible thing. Here you have these farmers who every year they go out, they work hard, they produce food, and they're able to sell their food to survive. But every 7th year, Hashem says to the farmer, I want you to take a break. I want you to take a sabbatical. Now, for a professor who's making 6 figures every year, maybe they can afford to take a sabbatical every year. But for a simple farmer, how is a farmer able to do that? And then on top of that, every 50 years, Hashem says that after you've rested your field on the 49th year, which would be the 7th year of the 7th cycle, rest your field for 2 years in a row. It seems like an impossible task that Hashem is asking. But Hashem says, don't worry, I'm going to provide from you. Now, normally, Hashem could always provide for us without us putting in the effort. But Hashem asks us to live our lives al pi derech hateva, according to the laws of nature. And within the laws of nature, if a person does not go out, does not work, they're not going to have food, they're not going to be able to support their families. But Hashem says, on these years, the Shemitah years, and all the more so the Yovel years, on these years I'm telling you, do not work. Do not worry about your livelihood. I am going to provide for you. The other years are years where you live within the laws of nature. This year, these years, the Shemitah years, and especially the Yovel year, a second consecutive year of not earning 1 penny, Hashem says, I'm going to provide for you. Live your life in these years above the laws of nature. Lema'ala miderech hateva. What a beautiful idea. And if that's the idea of Shemitah and Yovel, that when Hashem tells us to, we're not confined by the laws of nature, then that fits in perfectly with the counting of the Omer. The counting of the Omer is also Hashem telling us that count these days until you get the Torah. Once you have the Torah, then things change for you. You no longer have to live within the laws of nature to the same extent. Torah is something which is not defined by the laws of nature. And Hashem told Avram Avinu that your children are not defined by the same mazel, by the same laws of nature that the rest of the world is defined. Throughout our history, we've seen this many times. It doesn't make logical sense that the Jewish people are here today, but yet we are, because we live our lives that are above the laws of nature, lemala miderech hateva. Because we have brought Torah into our lives, we have accepted Torah into our lives, and we have made our lives completely focused around keeping the Torah. When you do that, then you're able to live your life above the laws of nature. You're not defined and you're not restricted by the same rules that everybody else is. And as we read this Parsha, and as we head towards the holiday of Shavuos, let's remember what an incredible opportunity is to have Torah in our lives. What an incredible opportunity it is to every day of our lives, live our lives by the rules of the Torah, by what Hashem asks from us, and to live our lives lamala midarach hatava, above the laws of nature. We live in times where there are uncertain times, and during these times especially, it's important to realize that although things might be uncertain, although we live in times of somewhat darkness and doubt, we have to realize that darkness and doubt is more so for those who live within the laws of nature. But us who live our lives above the laws of nature, we live our lives defined not by what the rest of the world says, but only by what Hashem wants for us. Then we have nothing to worry about. Let's get ready to accept the Torah. Let's get ready to bring Torah into our lives until the fullest extent. And let's get ready to live our lives lamala midarach hatava. Have a great, great Shabbos.